All right, guys, Steve Banoon here. We are on Patreon, Israeli News Live, and Marathon Week has begun. Even though I'm starting on a Saturday on the 20th of September. Anyway, you guys already know we've been dealing with Charlie here for a week long. I have actually got to speak to one of the Marine snipers on that, reached out to one of the Navy SEALs as well. We are all under the same conclusion. Even Mike Adams is under the same conclusion about that. I won't talk about that here, though, because I don't want that to cause a problem here. So, we are going into skull V2K, voice to skull technology or voice of God technology. And I think that's very important that we do that. Um, and because this is something I believe that's played a pivotal role. And I'm going to first play. I've kind of sped up things a lot because of the sake of just trying to keep from getting busted on other things. And you know what I'm talking about. This here is going to be the interview with Jesse Ventura and Dr. Robert Duncan. But I've got some very good stuff here for you on voice to skull technology. And I'm going to share some insights that I knew about this program early on. I've shared it with you over the years. I'm sure many of you that have been here for a long time already know. But let's listen here to Jesse Ventura and Robert Duncan when he first exposes the voice to skull technology. Listen.
Okay.
I do have our audio up as loud as I can. I'll try to increase it artificially afterwards there, but let's just play Jesse here. Listen in.
Your head. Now, I've heard of these Gwen towers. They allegedly were used before, and now they claim that they're not used for anything.
They do match up with the properties and necessary capabilities. They easily could be broadcasting across the country messages to people and causing them extreme pain. That's part of the whole world domination strategy. Control the population from subconsciously to consciously.
And now we've got a motive. Controlling dissenters, controlling the world, controlling you and me. Who are the controllers? I mean, is that our president? The Federal Reserve?
No.
So these are people within our government at a certain level.
Wow. I don't know how that happened, but maybe it was at the end. I forget. Anyway,
the brain invaders conspiracy.
He clearly, when he spoke to Jesse Ventura, in fact, let me play some more of this. Let me just see here if we got some more here. Let's listen in.
Dr. Robert Duncan put together the technology that allows the government to transmit thoughts and voices into the heads of Americans.
Dr. Robert Duncan. First question for you. What's negative about what you've done?
I've empowered the dark side by some of my work.
And what do you mean by that?
Technology is neutral.
Right.
It can be used for good or evil. I've worked on projects for the CIA, Justice Department, Department of Defense.
Is this the stuff, voices in the head and things like that?
Yes.
Right. So that just kind of sets the baseline for you. What I wanted to share with you as we're going to get into this. Voice of Skull technology. This is something that I've shared with you guys for quite some time, going back on multiple occasions. I talked about early on when it was looking at Muhammad Bouazizi. And for those of you that may or may not remember Muhammad Bouazizi, one of the things about him is that he's the guy that over in the Arab Spring there set himself on fire in Tunisia, and it got the Arab Spring going. Now, one of the fascinating things about his case, there are no reports from his family of ever him hearing voices in his head and things like that. And I'm sure even if he did speak about it, his family would have probably hushed him because the Arabic people believe in the jinn spirit. It's a very taboo thing of spirits that come to people that speak inside their heads and things like that. And they would be terrified if they even heard this. And he may not have been willing to even speak about it. But one of the things that I heard early on about him is that that type of technology was being used on him, and they used it so they could get this this Arab Spring going, and it actually worked. And of course, we know that President Obama, he was involved with the Muslim Brotherhood, and this is what they used to overthrow that particular government at the time so they can install their own puppet government that they wanted to do. Now, if you'll notice, Jesse Ventura talks to uh, Dr. Robert Duncan about world domination. In one other video, and I don't remember, it was Robert, I think it's in one of Robert Duncan's videos there, he talks about world domination. And he said the West basically only has four countries to go to be able to have a total control on world domination. And that's Russia, China, Iran, and North Korea. Those four nations are pivotal for world control. And this may be the reason why we see so much push on a war with Russia through the footsteps of Ukraine. This is why also they've armed Poland to be the fifth largest military in the world, and why even now they are constantly accusing Russia of violating the airspace of Poland. They've accused Russia of sending drones into the country, but yet we possess the technology to grab a hold of a drone and while it's mid-flight in the air, even missiles, and can reprogram them and send them into another direction. And that has been the case. Poland has even admitted that several drones came in from the direction of Ukraine and not that of Russia. Of course, we know that Russia is taking over quite a bit of the territory in that area, but they're talking about the Western controlled part by the Ukrainian government. So who's to say? And then, of course, we have the China and China wanting to go against some of the islands, also the South Pacific wanting to control all of that, and that becomes more and more of a threat to the United States, and so there's always these threats that they make China the big bad guy, and then of course Iran is obvious. Israel wants Iran taken down, and they want the United States to be involved in that. Oddly enough, Charlie was not a fan of that and really kind of pushed back on that. We kind of wonder about that. We'll get into that in another broadcast. But these are just some of the things that we've been watching. Of course, North Korea, that's always been considered to be a rogue nation that the West would like to take down. And there's always been talk that I've heard as well that eventually a nuke would go off on our western flank. And when it does, it will be blamed on North Korea. And even now that North Korea has a submarine that is capable of carrying nuclear weapons, and could it ever sneak up on our coastline? Theoretically, yes, it could. Would it happen? Probably not, because we know the movement of every enemy sub in the world. We have technology that is not even disclosed. I've not been able to get the disclosure of the type technology, but I have been told that Tesla is the one that invented that technology to be able to track these subs anywhere in the world. And there's not a single sub or ship that we don't know about at any given moment or time on a global scale. With that being said, though, like I said, Benghazi, he was used for that purpose. Another very interesting one is Mr. Cruz. Mr. Cruz, who was also accused of the shooting that happened in South Florida. Uh, uh, in an interview that they did about him, he actually, when he was being interviewed by the police, he claimed to be hearing demons in his head. Let me just play a clip of that for you here. This was on a local news channel down in Florida at the time. We were living there at the time when this event occurred. And I remember that coming out in the report that he talked about demons being heard in his head. He actually speaks about this happening for up to 2 years. And some of the intel I've heard about this technology before is that they profile individuals. They watch these individuals. They look at what their social medias are and what they think, and they look for those that are a little bit more unstable. And those are the ones that become victims of the voice to skull technology. In one of the interviews by Dr. Robert Duncan, and that's the one he did with Craig LaForest, who we interviewed here on Israeli News Live a little while back, he actually mentions that in the case of V2K, the voice to skull technology there, that they have. He would not come right out and say it because, as he pointed out, there are some things he couldn't speak about due to his disclosure agreements. But he did allude to the fact that some school shootings could be staged in order to be able to get gun control legislation put into place. We've always wondered if that wasn't what happened, and I know that would be very disheartening for families, and so my sincere regret to families that have lost loved ones in there. According to the court case, is very interesting when you look at the court case involved here. His entire public defense team that he had ended up closing in this argument early after only 24 witnesses. They had 80 witnesses that were supposed to come forward on his behalf. But they wanted to actually resign from the case. And from what we can gather, it was because they considered the judge to be hostile towards him. I can kind of get that, because if the guy is the one that they claim to be the actual shooter, although according to students, one particular student, and he was a black man. He was 18 years old at the time. We talked to him personally, and he was willing to come on Israeli News Live. And then something happened. He got a little bit afraid, didn't come on. But he shared with us that this young man was walking with them, and they could still hear shots going on in the school. Although there's a lot of speculation of that, a lot of that got downplayed by the law enforcement media and in the trial. But yet his defense team ended up wanting to, at the sentencing hearing, just wanted to pull out altogether, made the judge angry. But from what I gather, it was because the judge was, like I said, was considered to be hostile. I want you to hear, though, where he talks about hearing these voices in his head. And I take it very seriously, because I believe that should be something that should be taken into consideration. Whether or not he actually did the shooting in the school, from what I understand in the court proceedings, that was made known. They claim that all the footage was made available, but then again, who really knows if all that footage was made available? We know that there is even one teacher that claimed that there was more than one shooter on the location. And in fact, when they talk about him having a mask, the only mask he had was a gas mask. And yet two teachers identified the gunman with wearing just a face covering, not a gas mask. And I think that's something that should have been looked at as well. But let's listen into this voice, this demons, as he calls it, speaking to him. And then we're going to get deeper into what Dr. Duncan talks about, because I do believe that played a critical role in possibly what is going on even now up in Utah. Listen in.
Could talk to him. Cruz then told the detective it was a voice in his head, a demon, that made him shoot up the school. He told the detective he's been fighting that demon for years, and says just weeks before the school shooting, that demon ordered him to bring a gun to a park and kill as many people as he could.
What kind of park? Just
any park.
Any park? And you're going to start shooting people at the park?
Yeah.
And did you have a city picked out for what park you wanted to do? No?
I didn't want to do it.
What kept you from doing it?
My bad side. The demon.
No, but what stopped you from doing it at the park?
I don't know.
The detective repeatedly challenges Cruz, saying he believes he's making the whole thing up about the demon, just using it as an excuse for the shooting. Cruz, though,
I don't believe for a moment he was making it up. Now, what I do want to show, even though we have Dr. Robert Duncan as a prime witness in this type of technology being used, not only that, you've also got the mind torture, as he talks about, as he said to Jesse Ventura, there's mind torture as well. But I want to show you a very interesting video that I came across. This is a audio spotlight, how audio spotlight works. This is something that the Navy actually uses. And I'm going to play this for you. We're going to go a little bit longer in this clip here, because this teacher, and this is at a Naval Academy, if I'm not mistaken, I think that's exactly right. Dr. Bruce DiNardo explains how audio spotlight works and gives a jaw-dropping demonstration. Now, this is not the same technology, but it's similar to what V2K is. And I want you to hear how he explains it and then how this is going to be used. And we may speed this up. I don't think we'd have a problem with this one, but I'll speed it up a little bit, because he does kind of talk slow anyway, and maybe that would help us. Let's listen in.
Okay, bats, no problem. They're typically, they go up to 100,000 hertz. All right? So we can't hear this. It has some transducers here, some discs that generate sound, and it puts out 65,000 hertz, 65 kilohertz. How high can we hear?
1,000, I think.
Around 20,000. Well, you might be able to. Not you get older. Down around.
I don't think even them can. I don't think.
Yeah, I think. Yeah.
By now they are probably 18 or 17,000.
Yeah. We should have hearing tested. It's important. It's important. So anyway, 65 kilohertz, way beyond ours. Dogs can't hear it. It turns out cats can. Okay, bats, no problem. They're typically, they go up to 100,000 hertz. All right? So we can't hear this. It's going, I haven't turned it on yet. When I do, it's going to blast out a 65 kilohertz beam. Because the wavelength is so small, it doesn't spread. Because 65 kilohertz has a wavelength like that. So it's going to be
Like a laser.
similar to a laser. It just comes right out as a beam. Now, how do we make that audible? Well, they put a modulation on top of the 65 kilohertz. There's a modulation. And now, here's the next thing I have to tell you. That 65 kilohertz is very high amplitude. It won't hurt you, we don't think. Okay? You certainly can't hear it, and we don't think it'll hurt you. And it's very high amplitude. And what happens when you have two sound waves like this, sound plus sound can create sound, but only at high amplitudes. At low amplitude, sound waves just travel right through each other. You may be sort of familiar with this. But at high amplitudes, you can create sound. So what happens in this apparatus is the audio sound, the sound that you're going to hear, is actually created in the beam, not here. And because it's created in the beam, and if it stays in the beam, we have a beam of sound. So let me demonstrate this for you. Let me turn it on. And I'm going to find the piece of music that we like.
Yeah.
You may not like it.
The Eagles? You like the Eagles? Okay, good. Oh, we have a friendly audience this year.
Yeah. I think they're just saying that to
You're
make
not
us
going
feel
to hear
better.
it yourself.
All right.
If he's playing the Eagles music, watch what he does.
It's worth the $2,000. It's not our money. Now, the sound that you're hearing is being created in this beam. It almost sounds like it's coming from your head. So let me try to scan the whole audience here so everybody gets to hear this. Absolutely remarkable. Pete, are you getting it? Let's try to, one more thing. Let's try to bounce it off the wall. Raise your hand if you can very clearly hear it. I'm going to try to bounce it off the wall. Look at where the hands are raised. Put your hands down. No, it's bouncing off the wall. This is a beam of sound. Remarkable.
So a year ago, I made a video on the
Sorry about that. It automatically goes to another video afterwards there. But that is not V2K technology, but it is like a V2K technology. It is actually a spotlight beam, 65,000 hertz, if I remember, if that's what he said, right? And they can beam that into your head. And he explains it earlier in the video, it's going to actually be sounding as if it's inside of your head, not through your ears, right? Now, imagine what they can do when they don't have to have that beam just like that, but they can, from across the country, pop stuff like that up into your head, right? Across the country. Let's take a listen to some of Dr. Robert Duncan. Let's see. I'm gonna take you right. Actually, this is where he talks about taking over certain countries that I was telling you about earlier. It is on this video here, so let me take you right to it.
Already happened, though.
Yeah, that's already happening. So yeah, we're in the middle of the transition. They have basically 4 more countries to go: China, Russia, North Korea, and Iran, and then the rest of the world's kind of nothing. Here's another kind of theory. Why would you want democracy in every country? Well, it's because of mind control weapons. We can control who gets into power. So the CIA gets especially interested when someone wins, let's say like Donald Trump or Jesse Ventura, who I interviewed with, governor of Minnesota.
Oh, yes, the very famous interview.
He said as soon as he got in, 11 or 12 CIA guys interviewed him in the basement of the government mansion or whatever, and asked him, how did you get elected? You were not supposed to win. And so they were just curious why their voting models were wrong.
Okay, so Jesse Ventura, and I remember Jesse talking about this years ago, got into power, and he wasn't supposed to get into power. And he did. He talked about a dozen CIA operatives came in there, and he said, they look like your neighbors. He said, you would have never thought half of these people in there were even CIA people. Yeah, I get that. They do, believe it or not. They're kind of weird. Some of them are geeks. But it's like, how does this happen? because rigging the system is not just about voter machines and things like that. You become an antenna every day, whether you're being broadcast information through media, subliminal messages, all kinds of technologies we're being hit with. One thing he also says in this interview, he quotes another doctor there, and he talks about how that the brain has no firewall. Let's listen.
A voice, for example, that just compliments them all the time and puts them up, and you're the best. And
what he's talking about there is he's talking about people that are tortured by these thoughts that are coming into their head. Those of you that remember that watched the interview with Craig LaForest, he is just constantly bombarded day and night with voices coming to his head. It makes it nearly impossible to sleep because he is bombarded 24 hours a day. And so it's been very difficult life for him. He said he could be watching a game show and they know it. They can use his eyes. They can see with his eyes. They can brain map him. They can read his thoughts. Yeah, believe it or not, and Dr. Duncan is going to say that to you about how they can read your thoughts, things like that. And he said he'll be watching a game show and they'll be giving him the answer. He said he'll be doing an interview and they're trying to tell him what to answer in the interview. But he also talks about some people don't mind it because all they're doing is constantly complimenting them, saying nice things about them. But they've also, as he talks about, that they have. If anyone has ever had their voice on the internet whatsoever, they have gotten a sound. What do they call that? A sample of your voice, and then they can take that and they can build like artificial AI. Today you can ask your AI if you have Chat GPT or anything like that. You can use that type of technology there, and you're able to talk to it, and it talks to you almost instantly back. Well, they're more advanced with the CIA and with the DARPA programs, and they're able to do it instantaneously, but they can also mimic not only your voice, they can mimic your father's voice, your mother's voice, your brother, your cousin, or anybody else that they want to take and torture you with. Maybe they're having some of your family members just sit there and constantly berate you. One interview I saw Dr. Duncan in with was a guy from overseas, and he says his family speaks Russian, and his mother and father are constantly just saying the most hurtful things you could ever imagine to him. And it's all in his head, and he knows that they don't say it, but it's there. How do you get rid of it, right? Listen in, though. We want to get to the other part about the firewall.
They're also, yeah, but you don't hear about them because they like it.
They think it's their inner voice that's
they
sort of being very optimistic. They think they're wonderfully optimistic people generally, etc.
Exactly.
That's really interesting.
And then they're doing experiments combining 4 or 5 up to 6 minds together, hive minds.
Hive minding.
Another term is brain nets. And they're doing experiments of how to firewall the human mind. There was a colonel which had a famous paper. I forget his name right now, but it was the mind has no firewall, and it's so true. We didn't evolve that.
One thing that I think about when I listen to these things and hear about these type technologies is that we have dealt for centuries Satan being able to do these things. And when I say Satan, there's not one particular individual entity that can affect everybody's minds around the globe. So in reality, then, if we take it from that perspective, then the technology, we would call it, maybe in modern language, it would be alien type technology, right? In other words, there's a lot of demons that can put thoughts in people's heads. I mean, sometimes we get things that pop up in our head, and it's like, where the heck did that thought come from? But yet, these types of technologies are a little different. And I know that when we had on the one gentleman that I interviewed about this, Mr. LaForest, he actually says you can tell it's different. You realize it's not your own thought, but it's inside of your head and you just can't get it out of there. So, that makes it very challenging. Let me move on up here to where he talks about that connecting the four brains closer to the 18-minute mark here. Because he says they've learned in this hive mind they can't do more than six because then it gets very schizophrenic. And I've got the cat always in here when I'm trying to finish.
Hive together, they'll become dysfunctional in some ways because you're rewiring them. And MIT's done this with blue light mice, and they are able to solve a singular problem with combining brains. And so it's interesting. We think of ourselves as, well, two halves of a human brain.
He's going to make a very interesting comment on that in just a moment, but I do want to mention also they also did a hive mind with an ape and a woman, and they connected the two brains, and they were thinking that maybe it would help the ape to be able to see the way a human sees, think the way a human thinks, but the ape ended up killing the woman. I don't know if you'll ever hear about that publicly, but this next comment he's going to make here in a moment is going to be like he'll talk about it like as if it's the two sides of the brain, like you're two different people. I want you to really catch that one there for a moment because a little different, a little off topic, but it's something that I think about in a biblical aspect. Listen in.
You can cut the corpus callosum, you still think you're one person. And they used to do that for epilepsy surgeries. But you're
by the way, I am going to be going into another interview on this very soon on here. In fact, it'll probably be the one we do next. I'm going to be getting into this. This is so sad. I have to actually text someone in my house to come let the cats out. And yet I'm recording. So I'm sorry about that. But anyway, I'm going to be going into this about the soul and the brain and where does the soul exist, consciousness, etc. Something that's very interesting. And but anyway, when he's talking about this, it's something that I heard a neurosurgeon speak about. As he just said, they can cut the brain in half for those that have those severe epilepsy moments, because there's different types of epilepsy that people can have. It's not just the shaking, but there's also the seizures where it traverses one side of the brain to the other, and it can be catastrophic for the person. And so doctors, brain surgeons have been able to go in there and literally cut the brain in half. The people still function normally, but they're able to cut it in half. But I want you to hear what Dr. Duncan says about that. It's very fascinating. So I'm going to back it up just a touch there, and let's listen to what he says.
They used to do that for epilepsy surgeries. But you're technically two different people. But this is the reverse. This is integrating more brains, more half brains.
Now, did you catch what he said just now? He said you are technically two different people. Listen to that again. I mean, that may sound crazy, but it's not. Listen.
You still think you're one person. And they used to do that for epilepsy surgeries. But you're technically two different people.
You still think you're one person. And he said, but they do that for epilepsy, talking about dividing the brain. He said, but you are technically two people. I want to play it one more time. It's very important. And we're going to go into this in the next video more in detail.
Cut the corpus callosum. You still think you're one person. And they used to do that for epilepsy surgeries. But you're technically two different people.
You are technically two different people. Have you ever thought about that before? You're technically two different people? Now, this guy has a doctorate degree. He deals with brain mapping, brain technology, developing of all kinds of things there. But fascinating enough, that's even biblical. You remember I did a video not long ago, and I shared from the book of Thomas and the Nag Hammadi, but it was actually written in the book of Matthew as well, exactly what was written in the book of Thomas, where Thomas says He's quoting Jesus, and Jesus said, if the two in this house can make peace, nothing would be impossible to you. And in the Hebrew Matthew, Jesus says, if two in this one house make peace, you can say to this mountain, be moved, and it would be moved. And I remember when I was first finding this, I was so excited about it. I'm like, wow, the two in this, because I realized what he was saying. We get it, wherever there's two or three and they can agree, then God will do whatever that they desire, But he's literally talking about you. Normally, we think of that as your conscious and your subconscious, or your right, left side. Your left side of your brain is more analytical. Your right side of your brain is more into, it just believes, right? But it's at war. They're at war with one another because the analytical brain doesn't like what the right brain's got to say. The right brain just wants to believe and go forward, and the left brain says, no, that's an idiotic thing to think. And so what Dr. Duncan just said, you're literally two. I want to quote him just what he says, not what I say here. Let's listen to the way he put it.
It's interesting. We think of ourselves as, well, two halves of a human brain. You can cut the corpus callosum. You still think you're one person. And they used to do that for epilepsy surgeries. But you're technically two different people.
Technically two different people. I have never heard that statement made in my life by a person with his educational background. But then to look at it, I wish he was still alive. I was looking to interview him. I was trying to find him. That's how I got up with Craig LaForest. Craig was the last person to interview Dr. Duncan, and sadly he died last year. But I would have loved for him to have known his statement was biblical. Anyway, let's move on. He brings up the body snatchers. All right. How many people remember that movie, The Body Snatchers, right? Oh, goodness. Let me see there. Here we go. Here we go. This is the one I'm thinking of right here. Let's just see here for a second. And let me speed it up because I don't want to get any strikes on here. All right, so Body Snatchers, he mentions Body Snatcher. I think that's a different film from the Invasion of the Body Snatchers. And so I'll have to look into that to see. But anyway, this is where he gets into this 20 minutes in. And so I want to take you to that real quick as well. Yeah, it's 1830 in this video, I believe is where it is. Let's just
But
listen.
experiments are being tested on some of the public.
Yeah, I was in the wrong lecture for that, is what it was.
And they're completely alien to this planet. The planet's never seen this before, but we're creating them. It's sort of like genetic engineering. We're mixing genes up. New species are going to arise from that. How do you define it? How do you classify it? So when thinking of...
Okay, that's why I couldn't find it earlier. Let me go. This is the interview. It's actually in Erasing Memories. It's actually in this interview right here. So let me get to it. This is where he talks about body
best form. That's what this technology can do. It can run other software, overlay it on your hardware called the brain. And, this brings up so many issues. Well, how can you have justice if you don't know whose mind was behind the actions of the body? And so it's going to turn the justice system on its head. They can erase memories, reprogram them with false memories. And so you can't even use a polygraph test to see.
Isn't that terrible? Couldn't use a polygraph because they can erase your memories and implant new memories. Let me back up on this because some of this here that I was looking for was actually in this video here. And
you still think you're one person. And they used to do that for epilepsy surgeries.
all right, so we already went
But
into
you're
that.
technically two different people.
And it's not a very pleasant notion. They don't want to hear people talking to them all the time.
No, it's totally stealing one's brain, stealing their soul. You know, there's horror movies like called Body Snatcher, and that's in its best form. That's what this technology can do. It can run other software, overlay it on your hardware called the brain, and you know, this brings up so many issues. Well, how can you have justice if you don't know whose mind was behind the actions of the body? And so it's going to turn the justice system on its head. They can erase memories, reprogram them false.
You know, when he says it turns the justice system upon its head, that's exactly what we're dealing with this young man that, you know, allegedly they claim he was a sole shooter. I believe that we had two shooters at this school there, or at least more than one shooter from the different eyewitness testimonies that we heard years ago. Even though he may have been there as well, but the question is, he keeps openly, clearly saying he had these voices in his head. He thought they were evil. That's why they call it voice of God technology. In this case, for him, it's voice of the devil technology. So I believe that he's fully was being programmed to do it. And even though he didn't want to do it, it just was bombarding him constantly, constantly, constantly. And we're talking about Cruz is who we're talking about. All right. So, but continue to listen though. He's also going to talk about spoof voice and even controlled dreams. Listen to this.
Memories. And so you can't even use a polygraph test to see who they are, who they are. The CIA has been well known to split personalities and using hypnosis and other things. And one of their old mind control weapons was called REHIC, remote hypnotic intercerebral control. So let's say you're just connecting two minds. One is a trained mind of how to clone beliefs onto the target mind. You can make them angry. You can alter their voice. Let's say you're a politician and you want to make them sound like an idiot in front of the microphone. You can screw up their speech. You can alter the outcome of so many things. You can insert thoughts. But some of them you're talking about the overt targets that literally extra sensory perception. So we did a lot of that work in the 70s with the Russians. Well, it's true, but I always thought of it as mystical force or whatever. No, it's literally training the brain to understand external neural signals. So, for example, Duke University, they plugged some electrodes into a monkey's brain, gave it a third arm to eat food. The brain is very malleable, learned how to pick up food just with the robotic arm and feed itself. A third arm, you know. And so think of extrasensory perception as you're training these brains to accept the signals of something else that is biocorrelated with it to its brain. But right now it's being used with trickery. So there's it's called offensive information warfare, general terminology of that can be anything from hacking your computers and spoofing you to your friends, saying you sent the email, spoofing your voice, on a phone call. But it's such a wide variety.
Now, we've had that done to us before where people got emails allegedly from us that never came from us. In fact, I just got a message the other day and I wondered if it's not a spoof voice that came to the person. They asked me, Steve, do you have such and such a phone number? And I'm like, no, the only number I've got is the one that you have. And they never elaborated on it. But it just makes you wonder because that's some of the technology out there, not just voice to skull technology, but all kinds of crazy things that they can do to you. And we've not even touched the surface. But I'm going to end it there for now because there's so much information to go into. I hope this is a blessing to you somehow, especially the fact that we had that incredible video of right there in the school there, Audio Spotlight, how Audio Spotlight works there. You got to see Dr. Bruce DiNardo and how he explained the Audio Spotlight works and gives a jaw-dropping demonstration there. Uh, I really hope that was interesting there. I thought that was the Navy that did that, but it may not be. I don't know why I thought that, but maybe it was something at the beginning that caught my attention on that, but maybe not. Let's see. Okay, yeah, Postgraduate School Physics presents. That's what it was. I knew that I saw the Navy in there somewhere. So that's the Navy demonstrating that type technology. And of course, we know that Dr. Duncan talks about they use that technology to get the soldiers in Iraq to put down their weapons by telling them that it was Allah speaking to them in their own language there to put down their weapons. They were told to surrender, and they actually did it. And Dr. Duncan said they can project from one side of the United States to the other side of the United States and put that thought right into your head. I'd love to hear from you if you've ever experienced any of these things. Like I said, it's bad enough the devil out there doing these things and these evil spirits, but now we got government doing these things as well. How horrible that is. Stephen Benoon with Israeli News Live. Thank you for listening.